Hello, this is Dr. Damasnak talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3, and in this particular video, I want to talk about why you actually might want to do a dual PhD or do a joint PhD or doing some sort of PhD with another program. So if you don't know, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship, and I created this whole reciprocity project to give back as much as I possibly can. There were so many people that helped me along the way. I just want to give back as much as I can. So I created this sharing economy proofreading platform. And then I'm doing these YouTube videos. And there was one viewer that asked me about doing a dual PhD program. The only thing I ask of that one particular viewer, in the next hour, I want you to just do something nice for somebody else. It doesn't matter who it is oriented towards. You, maybe it's your mom. You haven't called your mom in a little bit, or maybe it is a coworker. All I want you to do is just maybe it's send them an email and just say, you know what, I really appreciate what you're doing. Just do something like that. And you don't have to put a comment below, but if you want to, you can. And I just want to see what's going to happen with this world if we can actually slowly make this world a better place by doing things like that. So just go out, try it. And actually, you know what? The fun thing that's going to happen is it's going to be more for you than it is for me in many different ways. And I'll let you figure it out by doing that. So why do you want to actually do a dual PhD or some sort of joint PhD? There's lots of different reasons, and there's lots of different programs out there that kind of offer something similar to this, right? So you might do a PhD in a law degree. So a lot of law schools will partner up with maybe it's an economics PhD. I've seen that at several universities. I've seen the PhD MD program where you become a physician. I think Duke has something like that, where you become a physician and at the same time you do a PhD. Or there is often this a PhD in a science, and then you go and do an MBA program at the same time, and you might sort of tack on, and it takes an extra year or something like that. So I personally am a really big fan of these kind of degrees, and the reason is it gives you options, right? So if you find out once you've been working in a particular thing, so let's say you are a physician and you find out that you really don't like the sort of physician part of it, where you're just kind of doing working with other people and just doing the sort of daily grind that physicians kind of do, right? That they understand to do, then they can, if they don't like that, they can go and do maybe they could do some research instead, or maybe they work in a pharmaceutical company. So that would be, so for example, you might do a PhD in chemistry and do an MBA at the exact same time. And if you realize that the research is not necessarily for you, you can go and then do the business side of it pretty easily after you do that. So that's why I'm a big fan of it. It gives you a lot more options in terms of your career prospects after that. The other thing that is kind of a side benefit that a lot of people don't think about is that in terms of the knowledge, where you're thinking about things and new creative ideas, it allows you to see things very differently than what everybody else is seeing them, right? So if you are just trained as a physician, you're going to see things in a very physician perspective. But then if you end up getting a PhD, you're going to understand that sort of the science behind a lot of it is constantly changing, and that and I'm not sort of pointing out that one particular thing, right? I'm not pointing fun at it, but it's just, the science is constantly changing, and there's lots of different things that we don't know. And that's one of the beautiful things when you actually study a PhD, you realize how little we actually know about this world. Or, if you are doing a PhD in an MBA, well, everybody in your chemistry lab might be thinking about sort of the science behind this. Well, an MBA is going to say, well, how do we actually commercialize that particular thing? And then you might sort of change the way that you're actually doing science to think about the way that you're actually going to commercialize it and do something with that particular thing, right? So it's really important in terms of even the research questions that you're going to ask going forward. And it's not going to be one thing or the other, but you're probably just going to have a better sort of perspective on that. And you can you can combine PhDs in all sorts of different areas and you're still going to get the same sort of thing. You're going to see things slightly differently than everybody else. The other thing, so what are some things to actually consider when you're doing a dual PhD? You should probably consider what you're training to do is what you're going to become, right? So if if you're doing the MBA and PhD program, then the outcome you're going to get, you're probably going to be a little bit more business minded. And if that makes sense, and if you want to kind of do sort of more business minded questions when you're doing chemistry, for example, then that makes sense, right? But if you're really not into that, it's just not part of what you're thinking about, then don't do it, right? So if you do a PhD and an MBA, you might end up working in a pharmaceutical company a lot. You have a high chance of working in a pharmaceutical company because that's what they're looking for, right? Like that's kind of the outcomes that they're looking for. Does give you sort of other options. And, in terms of a salary, that's really good in terms of a salary. A PhD and an MBA is going to take you a lot more than, just having a PhD, particularly in some of the core sciences. I'm not sort of I'm not sort of like being negative in any sort of way. I hope you realize that, but it's just, the reality of it in terms of whether industry is actually going to value that particular thing. And a PhD MBA is going to be highly, highly valued in a lot of pharmaceutical, biotech industries, medical device industries, the context that I actually study. So that's something to think about as well, right? But so here's the thing, if you do a PhD and an MD, it's probably not going to be the best sort of scenario to just do family practice, right? So if you do a PhD MD, you're probably going to be more focused on doing research, and it's going to make sense to work in a research, teaching hospital versus doing the sort of, the family practice as you might sort of understand the family practice. It's just because you do what you're trained, right? That's what you know. And if you get a lot of sort of PhD training behind it, you're going to realize that, there's a bigger world out there. And that's just kind of comes with gaining more knowledge, right? That you just realize that there's a bigger world out there than you would previously have seen. There's lots of actually really interesting research in my area that sort of talks about this kind of stuff in terms of opening up the possibilities of what you can possibly see. It's Dan Leventhal and Wesley Cohen. Dan Leventhal's at Wharton at University of Pennsylvania, and it's a very good idea. It's very much taken off in economics. I think is one of the best, most highly cited ideas in economics in the last 25 years or something like that. It's about absorptive capacity if you want to look at that paper. Anyways, so okay. Now, another thing that you can think about is, so if there isn't a formal program that is explicitly, a PhD, MD, or something like that, you then just go out and create it, right? Like if you are doing a PhD and if you're interested in another area, nobody's going to stop you from going into that other area. I find most people in academics are pretty open, so you can just go take a couple of courses in a different department, right? So that's what we would encourage with our students is, there's certain areas that we're good at training at my institution and at my program. And in general, sort of management, sort of organizational theory folks are really good at sort of creating ideas, but not so good on the methodological stuff, right? Like we're okay. We train people pretty good, but there's other programs that are a lot more rigorous, way more rigorous. So statistics, for example, if you go and take some statistics courses in a graduate statistics courses in a statistics department, it's going to be way more rigorous than what we could possibly offer, right? And it's just, it's no fault of our own. It's just that's what we specialize in. So the econometrics in an econ department are really good. And we just can't get to that stage. So even if you did a PhD in finance, by the way, they're going to take you, or they're going to sort of force you to take a bunch of econometrics courses in the econ department before you actually go and do the stuff in finance, right? Like that's just what happens. Or if, for example, you want to learn about population statistics, right? So go take some courses in epidemiology and sociology. Like those programs actually offer pretty good stuff, and you can understand a lot more in those kind of areas, and you're generally welcome to do that, right? So if you're doing you're doing a PhD or a doctorate in maybe it's organizational behavior, please do go take some psych courses, right? Go out there and learn about what they're learning in the psych department. It's going to be it's going to be a different perspective in terms of the rigor that they're going to expect. And it's like the questions are different. So it's going to give you a lot more insight, and I encourage you to do that. I personally did that. I had so I was doing my PhD in strategy, and then I really wanted to do a PhD in finance at the same time, so a dual degree. And I basically took all the courses. I think there was one course in PhD in finance that I didn't take, and I was sort of working along that way because I'm a big fan of that. In my undergrad, I did a sociology degree in engineering. Learned a lot. It benefited me a lot in a lot of different ways. So branding, for example, as well as just getting good insight into the world around me. And I wouldn't have did what I did without getting that background, right? It's you learn a lot. And one of the things that benefited me tremendously, and even though I probably only understood like a quarter of it, was that I took a bunch of courses because I was doing this sort of finance track as well. I took a bunch of courses in econometrics, and they were wonderful. I learned a lot. I did some microecon and things like that, and I learned a lot. At the graduate level, they're really cool. And I wouldn't have gotten that perspective and sort of had the ability to do those things without doing that kind of dual degree. And I wouldn't have been forced to do it, right? Like that's a key thing when you do that kind of stuff, is you're forced to actually go through that stuff, and you learn it a lot better than when you're just kind of casually learning it. So what are some problems with doing a joint PhD degree? So this is one thing that I did run into, is that not everybody's going to be necessarily supportive of that particular thing, and it often would take an administrator that's going to sort of push things forward as much as you possibly can. That's all I'm going to sort of say with that kind of thing, because it requires a lot more extra work on a lot of people's sort of side, right? So, for example, if you do a joint PhD, you're doing two PhDs, that you have to write comprehensives and exams in both of them, in both sort of departments, and that is a lot extra more work for somebody to grade on that side. But then as well, you're going to have to find people that are going to sit on your dissertation. That's a lot more work, right? Like it's a pain. And, in terms of the return that they're going to get, they're not going to see that return. It's probably not obvious, and they might not ever get a return for doing those activities. It's one thing with advisors. If you don't realize this, PhDs advisors will put a tremendous amount of work in something, and then it's likely, it's probably 80% likely that they'll never get a return on any of that effort in the immediate term, or just as, a direct kind of, okay, I did this and then I'm going to get this thing back. That doesn't happen. Generally, it's a long-term game, and you're more just giving out the sort of reciprocity, right? You're just trying to help out people as much as you can. So that's one thing to think about, is not everybody is going to be supportive. It's definitely going to take you a lot longer to do your PhD. It added about a year onto my PhD to do all these extra courses. And I did do a lot of extra courses, and they were a lot of work. They're really hard. Because I was training myself from ground zero, basically, and, continue to push myself through that. I trained and did a bunch of undergrad econ courses, and then I did, graduate level econ courses, which were really hard. And so it took a lot longer, right, to finish my PhD. And do I get a direct return from that immediately? No. And did it look like I was, kind of goofing around? Likely, right? It might have looked like that. Although I got a lot more training from that, and there's a couple of things that come from that. Is if it does take longer, you're looking at the people that went through the program with you at the exact same time or started the exact same time. Looks like they're way ahead. If they didn't do that kind of route and take a bunch of extra courses and stuff, it looks like they're just being, they're superstars compared to what you're doing, and that's just what's going to happen. I'll just point that out. So it does kind of eat away at this old noggin, right? It kind of makes you anxious and all that kind of stuff. So, and then the third thing that's really important is that if you don't know this in academia, there's lots of kind of signaling things that happen, and people are always like doing social evaluation where they're looking to see, well, is this person serious about the career, or is this person serious about doing research? And that's a really important question to ask. And the signals that you're sending sometimes, particularly if it's not directed, right, and it's just kind of all over the place and you're just taking courses all over the place, then it could be a signal they might believe that you're not taking things seriously and you're just kind of like a permanent PhD student forever. And that's a worry. That's a big worry for a lot of people. And so you have to sort of really communicate that this is going to benefit you and it's going to focus you in a different direction. So for example, if you're doing finance and you take a bunch of courses in a PhD in psychology, that's actually a really hot topic right now. And it's 10 years ago, that would have been a hard sell. But now people are like, wow, like they're at the cutting edge, so they get it. There's this whole behavioral economics thing that's happening right now and behavioral finance thing that's happening right now. And a lot of that is just psychology that they're bringing into the field. Believe it or not, like crazy enough, these people that study markets didn't sort of look at psychology in any sort of way. It's kind of strange, right? Or how humans actually behave. Really strange, but that's true. And science is weird like that. We kind of go in sort of spits and starts in terms of getting realism within within what we study. But anyways, so that's one thing you have to worry about, is whether they're actually going to discount the thing that you're doing, right? And so you have to really be focused, really keep going, and just take it seriously and communicate that you actually are taking it seriously going forward. So that's what I would do. To summarize everything, would I do a dual PhD? Absolutely. Is it for everybody? No, not at all. It's stinking hard. It is, people are going to give it a different, everybody has their own take on it. There is a lot of benefit from doing these kind of dual things because it gives you options. It also allows you to see things creatively that nobody else would have saw without doing that kind of stuff. That's one thing, actually. I teach an innovation and creativity classes. One thing that I actually would teach is to do something like that, just to go out and get some extra experience in different areas. So yes, absolutely wonderful. Highly recommend them. Would I, again, is it for everybody? No. I'm talking, the only people that should be doing something like this should be in, basically the top 10% or top 5% of being serious about the career going forward, right? That they're actually going to take it very seriously. It's not for everybody. It's very rigorous, very difficult to do. But then you get a lot more options to do any of those things. And that could be for any of these careers, right? Or any of these options, a PhD and MD, PhD, MBA. It's just a lot more work at the end of the day. And you're just packing on a lot more work. It's going to benefit you in the long run, and it's not going to be clear whether what those benefits are immediately. But if you do that, just know that it's a journey at the beginning. I'll just tell you that. So that's all I'm going to talk about. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, and hopefully this answered your question, by the way. And yeah, please do go and do something nice in the next hour. That's all I want you to do. Just do something nice to somebody. stop what you're doing, go out there and just say hello and just be a decent human being. All right, so take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.